Mother and child relationship is always an important story element for a lot of horror movies. In William Friedkin's The Exorcist, Mother Chris tried her best to solicit for help to get rid of her daughter's Regan's demonic possession. In Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, Mother Wendy was scared to her wits by the only person she trusted in her husband Jack, yet unleashed her innate maternal instinct to protect her son Danny from harm. In Roman Polanski's Rosemary's Baby, based on Ira Levin's novel of the same name, the immense fear Rosemary had of a suspicious group of people who she thought might be Satanists waiting to sacrifice her unborn baby. The pre- and postnatal instability of mothers pushed plots of many classic horror movies. In the whole franchise of The Omen, it banked on the prospect of giving birth to the devil, which even influenced an Argentine horror movie I reviewed recently in 1978. In Rizal Mantovani's Sumala, the yearning to bear offsprings drove the mother to sacrifice her children to the devil, which was a classic tale in Southeast Asia context, where we have Kuntilanak, the entity that arose from death during a difficult childbirth. A Taiwanese movie I'm waiting to review, in Xie Mengji's Mudbound, also instilled a fear of an evil entity baiting the unborn child of the protagonist. The tragedy of losing a child drove many mothers in horror movies to do the unthinkable. Yaguchi Shinobu's Dollhouse is a classic cautionary tale. The Filippos' Bring Her Back is another. In more contemporary Hollywood offerings, we have Ari Aster's Hereditary, which also delved into a mother's difficult relationship with her son, and the loss of a child aggravated the situation, and having an ominous family secret was not helping matter. James Wan, the Conjuring franchise, also played a lot on the mother's love for her children to fend off the advancement of evil entities. Last Rites itself delved into Lorraine Warren's protection over her daughter Judy. The selfless love from a mother was also apparent in a movie like Jennifer Kent's The Babadook, and one of my favorite horror movies of all time, Nakata Hideo's Dark Water. There were even horror movies with titles to emblazon the importance of the mother character. Darren Aronofsky's Mother, with exclamation mark, was a trippy hellscape for Jennifer Lawrence's character, simply known as Mother. We have Andy Muschietti Mamas, with Jessica Chastain, about a pair of sisters fostered by a scary entity in the woods, while Naomi Watts starred in the remake of the Austrian psychological horror Goodnight Mommy, with young sons thinking that their badly bandaged mother might be an imposter. The scariest of them all have to be Mommy's Dearest, which made the world never look at the wire hanger the same way again. In the first month of 2026, KK will watch 3 movies that had the underlying theme of maternity and the tatters with their child or personification of an offspring. I'm also including a 4th film which involved a child but did not have any sort of maternal theme. I'm just trying to include the movie to this review for the sake of it. We begin with We Bury the Dead from Aussie director Zach Hilditch. Hilditch came into prominence with 2013's The Final Hours, about the despair and desolation of mankind at the brink of a deadly asteroid collision to Earth. This led Hilditch getting a couple of films with sole distribution on Netflix, starting with 1922, based on a novella from Stephen King about a despicable father and son conspiring to kill their own mother and got the table turned badly on them. Hilditch will follow up with Rattlesnake, a horror mystery that got polarizing reviews. In Hilditch's latest offering, We Bury the Dead, the US Army, now conveniently taken over the Russian as the villain in the global scale, detonated a devastating mass weapon of destruction by mistake in the island of Tasmania, resulting in high mortality rate. Our protagonist, aka Rey Skywalker, was a physiotherapist from the United States and was anxious to find her husband, who had gone to the town of Woodbridge for a work assignment. She knew that there was high probability that he had met his demise, yet there was this glimmer of hope that he might survive. There was also the raging rumor that some victims still bear part of their mental capacity to function like a human being, but truth to be said, it felt something more akin to a zombie. Although our protagonist, by the name of Eva, was assigned to a place so much further from Woodbridge as a volunteer to retrieve dead bodies as the title of the movie implied, she had decided to go AWOL. Together with her fellow volunteer Clay, Eva would go look for Mitch, her husband, southwards, encountering dead victims who was reanimated and looked far from being normal, as well as better understanding the extent of devastation than what was reported on the news. Along the way, they encountered the local soldier Riley, who saved the pair from an undead attack. But it felt like the armed uniformed vigilante was scarier than the creatures they were trying to run away from. So it was apparent We Buried the Dead took a big leaf out of Alex Garland and Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later. I found parallels between these movies. Riley, the disillusioned Aussie soldier who was trying to find some lost memories and forced Eva to commit to his unruly demands, reminded me of Christopher Eccleston's army officer tormenting the female characters in Boyle's post-apocalyptic feature. Of course, Eva and Clay's tumultuous journey through the Tasmanian countryside felt like a cross between The Walking Dead and Mad Max. So what about the mother and child theme that we are running with this group review this time round? It seems like Eva's marriage was on the rocks with her inability to conceive, and through the scuffle with Riley, Eva got wind that his departed wife was bearing his child, who would tragically perish in the womb in the disaster. However, there was a major twist in the end, and Eva would make the unfathomable discovery on how the hazardous blast had little effect on pregnancy and allowed our heroine the opportunity to be a mother. This was also a plot element we had seen in Boyle's recent sequel, 28 Years Later, when our young hero Spike and his mother crossed paths with a pregnant infected, giving birth to an uninfected infant who Spike would look after eventually. We Buried the Dead banked on a solid story from Hilditch, who worked on the distraught of people grieving over the loss of their loved ones without realizing the danger of the dead coming back to life. Although it was not a typical flesh-eating zombie feature we were so accustomed to, might I say sick of by now. The ASMR bone or teeth grinding sound made by some of these creatures make my skin crawl more than watching them devouring the living. The movie was also buoyed by the performance of Daisy Ridley. After her successful turn in the Skywalker arc of the Star Wars franchise, we could feel the gravitas the English actress possessed, and her star quality was effortlessly shown on screen even in a small horror feature like this. Her supporting cast made out of local Aussie actors were fine, just less eye-catching than Ridley, including Brenton Thwaites as Clay, an actor who garnered some fame from his involvement in movies like Mike Flanagan's Oculus and Dead Men Tell No Tales from the Pirates of Caribbean franchise. Zach Hilditch did what he could to create a different take of the zombie apocalypse genre with the budget he was afforded with, and brought fresh ideas to a well-trodden path, while I could see how it was not favourably received by some horror fans. I would still give We Buried the Dead a decent 7 out of 10, and from the look of it, Hilditch is paving the path for a probable sequel. Mother of Lies is a strange esoteric folk horror feature that premiered on Shudder in January of 2026. The movie was written, produced, directed and starred the hardworking triumvirate of John Adams, Toby Poser and Zelda Adams. Toby Poser played Solvik, a creepy forest-dwelling, witch-like healer who Zelda Adams' character Mickey desperately sought out to help her with curing her chronic stage of cancer when conventional medical science could no longer do it. John Adams, who I presume was Zelda's father in real life, played his father here as well, accompanying his desperate daughter to seek out this healer, naturally feeling skeptical about the curing process and rituals, and serve as the audience conduit. To be honest, I was not in the right frame of mind to watch Mother of Flies, which interspersed visuals of flies and other skin-crawling critters, shots of the dreary forest, and shoddy acting performances with a mind-numbingly awful soundtrack. The appearance and shifty actions of Solvik are red herrings enough, which of course the father character Jake will pick up. We will also be led through the backstory of the healer and the tragic history with the village in the days of yore. The biblical symbolism with the forbidden fruits and the serpent did not come off as too distracting. In fact, the conceiving of the visuals to tell the story actually came off nicely done in their stymied style of filmmaking. While part of me wanted the deadbeat daughter, Mickey, played by the listless Zelda Adams, to just go away, I was wondering what actually happened to the father Jake, as he was seen poisoned by Solvik in a key scene, but was that an illusion? The revelation of Solvik given by the hotel staff supposed to carry a lot of weight in the climactic end. By that point, I might have given up on the movie. Besides having mother in the title, that was a key plot element of Solvik wanted to foster a stillborn she had brought back to life as her own, before neither the infant or herself could survive the brutality of the villagers. During this review, I realized that this was another effort from the Adams directing family. No, not this Adams family. Comprised of the patriarch of the family in John, mother Toby, and daughters Zelda and Lulu, and the involvement of other extended family members, the family had made many under-the-radar horror features over the years with titles like 2021's Hellhole, 2023's Where the Devils Roam, and 2024's Hellbender. Over the years, they had covered storylines like a traveling murderous circus sideshow family, traveling around for new victims, or digging up a frozen French soldier from the days of Napoleon, which harbored a parasitic creature, not unlike The Thing, but shot entirely in Serbia and made up of an almost Serbian cast. From what I have read from IMDb, fans of the Addams Family chided in the fact that they were sharpening their skills in terms of filmmaking and storytelling with every movie made. And from the noteworthy fresh rating on Rotten Tomato, critics agreed as well. For Mother of Flies, I'm unlikely to set myself up to better appreciate this movie on a rewatch, nor I can spare time for earlier works from the Addams, which felt like a lesser product to Mother of Flies. This is barely a 5 out of 10 for me. The Calling Witch began with a desolated children's book author writing a letter to her loved ones before deciding to end her life in their isolated house in the woods. She was survived by an adult daughter who would read the children's book, simply titled The Calling Witch, about a mother who was a children-eating witch caught red-handed in her misdemeanor by her own son to her younger brother as they were mourning her recently departed mother. The daughter Virginia, played by Danica Golombek, felt her duties were accomplished for her estranged father who had been constantly on extended work assignments away from the home, resulting in the family being badly fractured. Now that the mother had passed on, the responsibility to look after the much younger brother lies on Virginia, who had her own dream to go to the big city and be a legit author herself. She knew that her absent father would be a shoddy guardian for her brother. Struggling with family affairs was one thing. Curbing pesky juvenile pranks from a neighbor was another. Greg Dupay, the son of the town sheriff, had always been antagonizing them, and when it seems like Virginia's deceased mother was culpable for the death of Greg's mother, it drove the young Dupay to keep hounding the siblings. Things started unwinding in a foul manner at their secluded home, and Virginia naturally suspected it was Greg. But surely, the burly, beer-drinking man was not the one dressed up like the Calling Witch coming to life from the pages of their mother's book. In a tension-filled sequence, Virginia, armed with a shotgun, and Edward tried to investigate if the witch was real or just another prank put by Greg and his minions. It was not too long to figure out that Greg was not the culprit and there was really someone maiming the family, and the abhorrent nature of the family secret was being uncovered. The Calling Witch from director Mark Wilson was written by Chris Redd, the same team that made Wade in the Water from 2019, also starring Danica Golombek. This movie touched upon the family secrets, creating a dreadful remnant that the children had to absorb for the sin of their parents. The loss of the mother was felt, and an older sister assumed the maternal role when the father was blatantly absent. There were more prominent mother and child dynamics when the horror elements were introduced, and it connected to the children's story that supplemented the main plot of the movie. The twists in the movie were done competently, and that was what I'm looking for from these smaller horror features. Golombek as the protagonist held the movie like a glue, much better than what I've seen in Mother of Flies. Virginia was not an ass-kicking heroine, neither was she withering like a damsel in distress. She was just being decimated by all these crazy things happening in her life. The supporting cast was not of the caliber to rave about, but they were not distracting as well, including the young actor playing Edward. The house with its vast space and the dreary location, and the contraption to the treehouse beside it added to the story. The creepy factor of the Calling Witch was on point and had its references to the likes of the horror icons we had grown accustomed to, like a Kuntilanak or La Llorona, but even a reveal of a pale hand with slender fingers was enough to trigger that familiar fear in audience like myself. The Calling Witch is a nice little feature that sprouted across the year, those type that will keep horror fans occupied during the lull period before the next big horror feature. I'm awarding the movie a solid 7 out of 10. The final movie in this compilation was Marshmallow from 2025, directed by Daniel Del Purgatorio, with a screenplay from Andy Kraskowiak. This was the only movie that did not have the mother and child plot element, despite our protagonist Morgan was a child struggling with a trauma with his grandfather that led him to join a camp to build his mental strength and make more friends. So this was another summer camp type of movie, with hazing from the camp counselors, and poor Morgan had been targeted by a violent camp participant, CJ, which relieved Morgan's trauma with his grandfather, leading to dreams of him drowning. Like all kids in the camp, Morgan was told about the scary masked doctor who will hunt down campers in the woods to operate on them. One night in the camp, Morgan actually stumbled on the homicidal doctor, which sent him into hysteria and it spread within the camp, seeing the children scampering around, seeking refuge from being caught by the doctor. What the camp counselors did was to incapacitate the kids with tasers, as they were part of a nationwide program to help grieving parents who had lost their children under tragic circumstances. The details I shall not go into. Seeing the adults tasing their fellow young campers, Morgan and his close confidants of course were freaking out, and eventually they had been cornered, leading to them seeking the truth from the camp organizers. Ultimately, Marshmallow, which I thought was a term to describe children with frailty in their upbringing and using the camp to toughen them out, but now merely was reference to the campfire tale sharing, was a convoluted sci-fi thriller with a bit of slasher element, and setting it in the summer camp was very obvious. Del Purgatorio and Kraskowiak wanted the location, the audience to get into the mood immediately. The concept felt a bit like Stepford Wives crossed with the Children of the Cornfield as the plot thickens. I would not call the ambitious story outrageous, but the first and second acts were filled with loopholes and incoherent characters' motifs when you knew the direction the story was moving towards. The young camp counselors needed to follow strict protocols and be prepared to handle situations when things went haywire, but someone like the muscular frat boy type we often see in such summer camp stories was the last person to trust to keep things under control. Georgia Wiggum, daughter of character actor Shel Wiggum, played the leader of the counselors and carried an air of authority and gave a decent performance. It really felt like she was trapped in a pressure cooker with all the bullshit she had to handle at work. Seasoned actor Corbin Benson, who had a history with smaller horror movies, had a meaty cameo, and Alicia Rayner, who was the conniving prison warden from the earlier seasons of Netflix Orange is the New Black, played Morgan's loving mother. It was distracting for me to see her in this movie after being a fan of that women prison series. The main instigator of the program, Hugh, was played by Paul Soter, who was known more as a comedian as part of the Broken Lizard comedy troupe, who gave us movies like Super Troopers. Young Hugh Lawrence and Kai Chek played Morgan and his love interest Pilar respectively. There was evidence in the metamorphosis in the character of Morgan, while Pilar was complementary to Morgan through the shenanigans, but the acting would be instrumental if you want to enjoy the movie, especially when a sequel is on its way. Marshmallow had been a well-received feature due to the novelty with the plot in the summer camp slasher, but I was not entirely sold on the story. I also had problem with the yellowish filter for the entirety of the movie, and once again, more distracting synthesizer music score, which is getting tiresome. I could not offer more than a 6 out of 10 for this movie. Despite some indifference in the movie watching experience with this batch, the year was barely beginning and it felt like it was shaping to be a decent one, much different from how I had projected it at the tail end of 2025. If you have enjoyed this gargantuan 4 movies reviews, please help by clicking the like button. Subscribe to the channel as I would cover as many horror movie offerings from 2026 and certainly some older ones from time to time. My last review was a mix of old and new, with a pair of movies of how things went terribly wrong, staying in a cursed Airbnb booking in Mercedes Bryce Morgan's Bone Lake and Zach Cregger's Barbarian. I seriously doubt any of the mothers in these movies reviewed today deserve the Mother of the Year accolade, especially none had mastered the use of the wire hanger like Joan Crawford did.